I walked across the park, or I walked through the park. In other case, the train goes across the tunnel, or the train goes through the tunnel. Across the park, through the park. Across the tunnel, through the tunnel. Have you ever pondered when to use across and when to use through? Fascinating, right? Now, do these phrases give the same meaning, or is there a nuanced difference between them? And if there is a difference, what kind of contrast is it? We'll plunge into the depths of these questions and discover the subtle shades of meanings that separate these seemingly similar words. Get ready for an exploration of language and an unraveling of mysteries. Hi everyone, welcome to our exciting exploration of subtle yet crucial differences between across and through. Across and through. In this video, we will unravel the mysteries of across and through to enhance our language skills and communication prowess. So prepare to delve deep into their nuanced applications and gain a newfound confidence in their usage. But before we begin our exploration, I kindly ask for your support. Please take a moment to like, share and comment on the video. Your engagement enables me to connect with and assist more viewers. Alright, let's kick things off. Across or through. Across or through. So these two words are prepositions. When describing a movement or a position, we use across, through. They are also used often interchangeably, but there is a subtle difference. There is a slightest difference in their usage. Understanding this difference can help us communicate more accurately and precisely. The first one is across. Across typically means from one side to the other without necessarily implying entry or passage through something. Across means from one side to the other side, not necessarily entering into something. For example, I walked across the street, which means I went from one side to the other without entering a building. The second one, the river flows across the plain, which means it flows from one side to the other without entering a specific area. So across is used for passage from one side to other side without necessarily implying the entry into a specific area. Whereas through, on the other hand, often means entry and passage from one side to the other, or a path that goes through something. So here there is an entry into something and goes through it. Whereas in across there is no entry, but here there is an entry. For example, I walked through the forest, which means I entered the forest and walked through it. And the next one, the river flows through the canyon, which means it enters and flows through the canyon. Canyon is nothing but an area, a deep area. So the key differences between across and through: across typically means from one side to the other without necessarily implying entry or passage through something. So without necessarily entering something. Whereas through, on the other hand, often means the entry and passage from one side to the other, or a path that goes through something. Let's examine some more examples. The bus drove across the bridge, but it went through the tunnel. So it crossed the bridge from one side to other, but it went through the tunnel, which means it entered the tunnel and it came out. The second one, the water flows across the surface, but it passes through the filters. Through the surface there is water, but it enters the filters and it passes through it. The third one, the company expanded its operation across the country, but its influence extends through the entire industry. The influence enters into the industry. It is there entirely. So these examples give us the distinction between across and through in their usage in different contexts. Now coming to the first slide, I walked across the park or I walked through the park. What does they mean? Do they give the same meaning or different? I walked across the park and I walked through the park are correct and can be used interchangeably in many cases, but there are nuanced differences in their meaning. I walked across the park suggests that you walked from one side of the park to the other, essentially moving over a wide or open area. Whereas I walked through the park implies that you walked within the park itself without necessarily crossing from one side to the other. This phrase emphasizes your movement inside the park rather than the act of crossing it. In everyday language, however, the two phrases are often used interchangeably and the distinction is not always strictly observed. If you want to emphasize the act of moving from one side to the other, I walked across the park would be more suitable. If you want to emphasize the movement within the park boundaries without necessarily crossing it, I walked through the park would be more appropriate. But ultimately, both the phrases are grammatically correct and can be used based on the specific emphasis or context you want to convey. Similarly, let us take the other example. The train goes through the tunnel or the train goes across the tunnel. Which is correct? And how does they differ in their meaning in different contexts? When we say the train goes through the tunnel, it means that the train is passing from one end to the other tunnel. The train is passing from one end of the tunnel to the other. The word through is commonly used to describe movement within an enclosed space such as a tunnel. On the other hand, when you say the train goes across the tunnel, it could imply that the train is traveling over the tunnel, but it doesn't convey the sense of traveling within the tunnel itself. Therefore, the train goes through the tunnel is the right phrase to use when describing a train's movement within an enclosed space such as a tunnel. So, remember, across typically means from one side to the other without necessarily implying entry or passage through something. Whereas through often means entry and passage from one side to the other or a path that goes through something. That's it for today's video on the differences between across and through prepositions. Thanks for watching and learning with me. Now go ahead and practice using these prepositions correctly in your everyday conversations. But don't forget to comment your own sentence on the comment box. And even don't forget to like and subscribe for more language lessons and tips. See you in the next video. Thank you very much.